tell us a little bit about where you were born and about growing up there?
Well, I was born and raised in, actually born in Matotua, but raised in Pesenga. And that's where I lived until I was 11. And we left here in Samoa on 49th of November because my dad thought it would be better for us to move to New Zealand to get a better education. And that's exactly what we did. And of course, the church started moving along there pretty fast, being a Polynesian country. And I really appreciated what I was doing here in Samoa. I lived and was able to see what's going on and see how the church is then in relation to what the church is now. Totally different.
And I was born in Smithfield, Utah, a little town north of Logan, Utah, and in a wonderful place where a cowboy can ride horses and rope and ride, and I lived on a farm and had a wonderful time growing up with my mom and dad and brother and sister. Just normal, not very poor, not real expensive lifestyle. One pair of jeans, one pair of shoes for church, one pair of shoes for play, and then I'd roll my Levi's under my skirt so I could have Levi's at school because I was a total tomboy. Had a great time growing up in a little place called Smithfield.
But I want you to know, being from Cache Valley, right here in Saniatu, I want you to know that there were quite a few missionaries who were called to come and take care of the herd that they had here. And those missionaries were called from
Cache Valley.
Cache Valley. And I don't remember any of their names, but there were quite a few of them. Because back then, they come around until about 5 years after that, then they finally go home. And that kind of made me happy. And I'm sure she was kind of happy when I told her that. But that's what happened in this very area of Saniatu. Yep.
Now, would you please describe the church while you were growing up? What was the church like when you were growing up?
Well, the church was not very popular, amongst non-members. But those converts who actually, decided, the Mormon church is the one for them, they really made it. And for me, I really enjoyed it because my dad was a member all his life. My mother was only 21 when she joined the church from LMS, and her mother didn't really like that, but my mother really enjoyed being a member of the church. She quickly turned into that and was able to, pick up the church principles and how to raise up families within the church itself.
Was there ever any opposition to those who would convert to the church back in that time?
Not me, not at all. I'm one of those guys that I guess is educated to accept people, and that's the reason. That's how my dad was. Accept people of what they believe and different kinds of people, and that was that.
Sister Almu, how about for yourself? How was the church in Cache Valley growing up?
Oh, 98% LDS. Totally, that was the way that everybody was, and if you weren't a Mormon, nobody knew it. And if they were either Jack Mormons or good Mormons, and I knew more Jack Mormons than I knew strong Mormons. Because my mom and dad were good people, but they didn't go to church, but they always sent me and made sure that I attended church and did all the activities and all the sports programs, and it was very good, very strong.
And one of the things that got me going to the church and the rest of my brothers was that the church always had a program, where we can play games. And one of the most important games was basketball. And I remember the old Samoan house over there where the temple is. We used to go there and play bouncing balls inside that house because it had a cement floor. And that And the other thing is that the mission home had a tennis court. So we used to go over there and sit around until it was free. Then we would try to get on and see if we can play tennis.
Tell about your dad's toys that he would make you as a little boy.
And well, as a little boy, you know, like I said, Dad didn't have very much money, but he used to carve out our toys for Christmas. And that was the funnest time, because when Christmas morning came, you know, we'd go in there and look around, and we could see what Dad had done for us. And that I could see that we were able to kind of emulate what he was, you know, doing in relation to being a little humble and take what life gives us, you know, and then instead of saying, I want more, no. Just what he's got, that's what we took.
What about the coconut stick and the setting
yeah.
the...
We used to have the old coconut. We used to go cut a coconut and put a stick in there, especially when it's raining. Put that along there and run along, even like pushing a little boat.
And then setting it afire.
Or else,
The coconut afire and then pushing it down the road.
yeah, that's right.
They would smoke all the way down the road.
But after that, Dad used to make us the ultimate toy that he made was one out of a 3-inch pipe, and he put in 4 chambers. The very last chamber there was a hole. Then he made about a 3-foot barrel, and then he made legs in the back and the front. That hole we put in kerosene, and then we just heated it up. And you know, when you heat that up, I mean, the gas is ready to take off. And we used to really play with that.
A cannon. It was a cannon.
Some of us would be sitting there in the front, you know, pulling, and you know, the brother in the back say, "Well, turn to the left." And we used to put milk cans in front and takes off.
Big cannons.
And I mean, that was Christmas and that was New Year's Day, and
So there
that
were
was
no
fun.
social workers in Samoa.
No.
You know what? The other thing that really got me going is that my mom used to be in charge in MIA, the old MN and cleaner program. They used to have it at our home. Mom and Dad used to cook and have all that. And that was one program that actually got lots of members going, new members of the church, because it was something to do with not just the young people, but in between young adults. That's what we call it nowadays. But the old MN and Cleaners program back then, I mean, it just took off for the younger people. Yep.
Would you tell us a little bit about the role of religion in your parents' life? Let's start with Brother Alden.
Well, let's start off with my mother, because she was a non-member when my dad met her. She was an LMS and very studious in the Bible, and I think that's what drove her in relation to the way she lived in Samoa. But I think that the other thing that really helped her is because she was not completely Samoan, not 100%, because you won't believe this, her mother's maiden name is McDonald. And then when she married a Fruin, and the kids in between, and you know, here we are in between that mix. So mom and dad were able to really think about the church. Dad always did, because you know, he was born and raised in the church. But when my mother saw that how my dad lived, church principles and all, that's what she loved about my dad. And my grandmother didn't want her to marry my dad because he was part Chinese. But anyway, besides that, everything in relation to church, both of them were mixed right there. When she finally joined to be a Mormon, she was just a natural person as a Mormon. Yep.
Your dad, how far back is your family? How did your family join the church? What role have they had in the church here in Samoa?
Well, I know my grandfather, and that's Amu. He was in another church of another faith, but the Samoan culture for Samoa was if you have a person who takes care of a church in a village, everybody in the village is supposed to help that person or that minister be fed every day. Well, our grandfather Amu had that chance, but the older boy John that was asked to go take the food over to the minister of his church was kind of late that day, and of course the minister told him, well, it's late and I don't want it. You can take that back home. And that's when my grandfather Amu decided, if that's the way a man of God acts, then I'd better go look for another religion. But he's already heard of the Mormon church being over in a little village called Whangali, and that's on the other side of up here. And that's how the church came into his life. And when that happened, the older kids that was already born naturally became members of the church. And when my dad was born, he was only 4 months old when his mother passed away. And then when he was 7 years old, then his dad passed away. But other than that, he really enjoyed working within the church. And I just can't believe how my dad went through from life when he was 7, working, but he saved a lot of money. All I know is that he wanted to have a good education, and he heard from the church leaders that there was a school in New Zealand that that members could go to. And so he saved a lot, and when he became of age to go there, and he was able to go there and not only learn a specific skill with fixing automobiles, but he also enjoyed just being amongst members of the church in New Zealand. And that's how I think he was able to really love the church.
We have a school called the Amu Academy that's located right next to the church compound in Samoa. And also, we know that there was also a family that was very instrumental in acquiring the land for much of Pesanga that was also ended with Amu. Are you of any relation to either of those, or do you know anything about that?
Well, that's my grandfather, Amu. He was, like I said, when that was over, then he decided he wants to give the Mormon church a piece of land to start the church with over in Pesanga. And so, with his guidance in relation to that, most of his kids went to church. But the church, the school is now, there's a school, a brand new elementary school, which is called the Amu Academy. They use that name to honor him. In fact, they called some of my brothers to say if that was okay. I never got a call, but that was okay for me. Because, our grandfather needed that people around here in Samoa need to know that he actually gave a lot to the church in relation to building up of the church and how the church is today.
He gave the land to the church for $1, one Deutschmark. He told that at that time you couldn't buy or sell land, in a way that we see it and we know it today, but it was also illegal to just give it away. And so he said, this land does not belong to me, it belongs to the church. And so he gave his portion to the church for $1 Deutschmark.
Would you please explain what is currently located on the land that he donated for that $1 Deutschmark?
Well, that is the biggest landmark. If you go west on the main highway, you'll see the most beautiful temple that they completed. I think it was 2005 or 2006, because the first one got burnt down. And for me to come here that evening, we arrived here in the middle of the night, and when I saw that first spiral with Uncle Moroni blowing his horn, I said, man alive, the church is here, and so it's here to stay.
And to know that it was on his grandfather's land, and his father reduced the price of his property 3 times for the church. They kept coming back with a price, and they said, no, that's too much. This land belongs to the church. He says, well, how about this? He says, no, that's still too much. So they came back. He says, well, how about this? No, that's still too much. All I need is enough money to take my family to New Zealand, my 7 children, and help them get an education. And that's all I need.
So you see, that happened when President George Elbert Smith sent Elder Matthew Cowley down here to the Pacific to find out who was leading the church in the local level. Because during the Second World War, all the white elders had to go back to America. And here in Pessanger is when President Golden Hale was the one administering the church then, or the mission. And so Dad happened to be in that committee, running around looking for a piece of property that is close to the church headquarters, which is now in Pessanger.
Which was the old Amu's land
Yep.
that he gave to the church.
Anyway, when my dad finally decided, he told the head of the committee, he said, President Hale, this is not working because the non-members are not selling. But he said, I've got my 3.5 acres that my father already gave me, and that's the old man Amu. He said, if I let this go to the church and then build a school, to start off the school with, have the church to start off the school the way they want it, then things are going to roll along pretty well. But make sure you negotiate with the two sisters, Vi and Layla, and then of course the property that the old man gave him. He said pretty soon the church will have all of that. Well, we left to go to New Zealand in '49, and we found out that the two sisters, gave up, and now the church got all that property. And
With
so,
the school,
so if you go to
everything
the
is on.
school, and you see where all the buildings are, the group of classrooms, that's our 3.5 acres. And then everything else in front of that, towards the temple, is the two sisters. But that was really good because, my dad said, my land is not, I don't own this. I'm just taking care of this for the Lord. But I only just want just enough for me to take care of my family, because there were 7 of us, and of course Mom and Dad makes it 9, to go to New Zealand, live there, and I'll find a job within 6 months, and then put something down for the house. And that was it. Yep.
His parents were also called on 3 labor missions to help to build the school in New Zealand, and then all the boys also helped building the
School and the
temple,
temple.
and the temple, and so they were on that labor mission building the temple in New Zealand.
About New Zealand, when mom and dad, when we first got there, we got there '49. President Gordon C. Young, and he had the permission from President George Albert Smith to look for a property for the church to go ahead and build school. That's when Dad got involved. But anyway, when we left and go over to New Zealand, after 3 years, the church already got their property to build the school. And in 1953, April, they had a huge mission, Huitau, that's what they call it in Maori, which happens to be a church conference. And that's when they called all the labor missionaries. And my mother and father were called to go. And so Dad told Sidney J. Otley, happens to be the father of Gerald, who conducted the choir. He said, I can't leave my kids here. I want to take all of them over to the project. And at that time, they were already starting to build school faculty homes. And so the number 3 home on the main road was ours. We stayed there. And Dad he took care of all the motor pool for the project. And I want to tell you guys this story because I think, to me, this made my understanding about the church and how my family, and especially my mom and dad, loved the church so much, especially Dad. Back in 2122, Elder David O. McKay, who was an apostle then, came with Hugh Cannon, I forgot his middle name, in 1921-22. Well, Dad happened to be their chauffeur, take him around here in Upolu. And one of the places, of course, that Dad brought him to was right here in Sauniatu. But anyway, after David President McKay toured everything, he finally came to the where my dad was working in that little motor pool. And my dad didn't see him, but President McKay called him out, Oliva! And then Dad turned around, there he was, just a few steps back. And Dad looked and looked and looked. He couldn't believe his eyes. He walked over, shook hands with the president, gave him a hug. And while he was hugging him, he asked the president one thing. And he said, President McKay, there's only one thing I'm asking of you. I want you to come to my home, you and your wife, and the rest of your party, to have dinner. And lo and behold, that was it for him and for all of us as his children. So all of us went home and took care of the whole dinner, and it was fun. Because when he walked in, he saw our second oldest brother, Melvin. He said, hey, I've seen this kid. He said, yeah, he's over in New Air on a mission. And then when the dinner was over, he said a few words and everything, and we all shook hands, and then he said one thing that Dad will never forget. He said, Brother Amu, one of your children will go to the mission in the southern Far East. Yeah, it wasn't Hong Kong then. It was Southern Far East Mission, which was headquarters in Hong Kong. And it was just Tony, William, and Leonard. We were the only youngest that didn't go to the mission yet. Well, by then I was already in school at Hawaii, and Mom and Dad were in the labor mission. They finally sent Leonard on a mission here at Samoa. That was cheap mission because there was a lot of family here to take care of him. And then Tony was the only one left. Well, he was working, outside. He was finished the labor mission now because the temple was done and the school. And Mom called him up and he said, Tony, I got a letter from Salt Lake. And Tony said, well, don't open it, Mom, because I know where I'm going. Wait till I get home and have dinner tonight and we'll find out. And so we had dinner and Mom had the letter there, and my brother Tony said, Mom, I am going to Hong Kong. Go ahead and open it. Sure enough, hello. You're called to go on the Hong Kong Southern Far East Mission. And that's where he went for 2.5 years on this mission. And that fulfilled what the prophet said. Well, I wasn't left out, but I can tell you that later on because it's a different era of what happened there. But I think our family really enjoyed in that time. And by the way, people in New Zealand did not know that there was going to be a temple built. This was in 1955, in February, when he was climbing up and he saw the school building, and then he told the brother, there's going to be a temple built here? Of course, they didn't know it was going to be, well, he couldn't see the hill, but later on they found out. And what really made it fun, it was this, is because of the land situation. 215 acres, well, 1/3 of it was all peatland and swamp. But the guy that owned the property next to the church, he had a huge farmland. It was over 1,000 acres. And so Brother P. Singer, who was the head of the project, Brother Mendenhall, who was the chairman of the church building program, Brother Edward Crystal, who was the mission president, and so on. They went down and asked the guy if they wanted to sell. And of course the farmer said, no, absolutely not. No, not at all, not 2 moments. Well, sorry. But before President McKay got on the plane, Pan American, he said to Brother Mendenhall, you guys go back over there. That farmer's going to sell. And he's not going to sell just one part. Sure enough. About 3 weeks later, they went back. The farmer said, oh, by the way, you guys can have this. You can even have this home, the home plot. And you can have the whole farm, everything on it. That was cows and sheep. And 1/3 of the land was under swamp. So that's how I can remember what President McKay came to our house. And especially Dad was happy because, the president of the church remembered him when he was on this trip back in 21, 22. And this was way back in 58 when they actually met. 55 when that happened. So
When his parents were here on their living here in Samoa, his mother Louisa had 6 boys, and Matthew Cowley came, and they went to meet Matthew Cowley, and she knew through her faith that if she were to talk to Matthew Cowley, he would give her a blessing. So he went up to Matthew Cowley, and she asked Matthew Cowley if you'll give me a blessing to have a baby girl. And Matthew Cowley looked at her, and she was already about 4 months pregnant, and she said, "Sister Amu, don't you think it's too late?" He says, "No, I know with my faith and your blessing, I will have a baby girl." And so he gave her a blessing, and my uncle's brother was here in Samoa on a mission at that time.
it was Maurice Memmott.
Maurice Memmott, and he assisted in that blessing. And President Cowley, he left the area and went home, and then he came back probably about 8 or 9 or 10 months later, and he told his secretary, he says, "I want you to look out through the window, and if you see a little Chinese man standing there holding a baby and he has a smile on his face, I'm getting off the plane. Otherwise, I'm not getting off the plane." and his mother had a little girl, Francella.
Yeah. And she was named after President Golden Hale's wife, and her name was Francella.
So his family has been deep rooted in the church his entire life, and that has definitely blessed our family and blessed our lives.
What year was that with Matthew Cowley?
Matthew Cowley saw us in 47. We had a big dinner with him over at Uncle Uli's home. And then it was 1948 when he came back. And that's what happened.
Would you mind telling us about your memory of the dinner?
Oh, yeah. In 47, we had a big dinner over at Uncle Uli's house. He was sitting on the head of the table. Mom was on the right side, and along with Dad, and then the rest of the family. And you won't believe this. While everybody was closing their eyes, saying the prayer, of course he wasn't saying it, you see. He was picking at the food. He was picking at the food. And my mother happened to open her eyes and saw this. And then, of course, she closed her eyes, and then when everybody said amen, Mom said, "Elder Cowley, how can you do this? Eating while we're blessing the..." Of course, he was the kind of a person that was down to earth, and yet had the Spirit of the Lord with him. And so,
He said he was so hungry.
he was a person that even you guys, if you met him, you'd love the man right away.
From
That's
Preston,
how good he was.
Preston, Idaho.
Yeah.
Born and raised in Preston.
Now, in that situation, when he passed away, what was the reaction of your family when he passed away?
Well, very, very sad. Yeah. Actually, Mom and Dad cried. Yeah. It's just like, it was just like his brother passing away. And we had a family prayer and dinner that night, and couldn't say hardly anything, but just, shared tears of sorrow, and that's all. And happiness that he would pass on to the other life, and that was it. Yep.
Let's ask you some questions, Sister Amu. How did your family learn about the gospel? How far back does your family go?
We've been lifetime members in the gospel. My father served a mission in Hawaii. He was there for 3 years. And so I grew up learning about Polynesia when I was just a small child, and always knew that I was going to Hawaii. But my family has always been very in the church, right from the very beginning, in being in Cache Valley.
Now, you said for a period of time they were...
For all of my growing up years, after my dad came back for his mission, he fell away from the church. My mother and him both, and so I grew up in a kind of a Jack Mormon situation.
Did they ever reactivated?
Yes, in fact, my mom and dad were, into alcohol a lot, and they, a lot of adversity, but they always sent us to church. They always taught us really good things, but it was hard growing up in that situation because you'd go to church and you'd be told this is the way you're supposed to be living, and then you go home and you see them living a totally different lifestyle, and so it was very conflicting. The situation was very difficult, but I always knew the church was true. There was nothing ever in my heart that ever tore me away from that. I had a long life dream to be the best that I could be, and I think my mom and dad chose to come to this earth through adversity so the three of us children would be strong. And all three of my brother and sister and I have all been married in the temple, and are all three very strong in the church. And the transition from growing up in adversity to today is I think kids ought to do that. It seems like you raise your children in a perfect lifestyle and close to the church, then they want to go out and experience the other side. But if you grow up in adversity, you learn that this is not what you want, and it pushed us the opposite direction. It's been hard, but it's been very good.
But I think one of the best things about it is that our youngest boy, Grandpa, and that's her dad and mother, really liked our little boy. And when time came to be baptized, I baptized him at 8, and then her dad.
My father, he blessed him. He gave him
the Holy Ghost.
Gave him the Holy Ghost, and it
And
was
that was
through
really good.
our children that brought my mother and dad back into the church. It was through them seeing our lifestyle and wanting to be around our children that they stopped all the things that were going on in their life. And my dad became back as a home teacher, and my mother, she is very, very active now, very strong.
Yeah.
But it's been our children have been a blessing in their life, and my sister's children and my brother's children and grandchildren. So you never know when that spirit is going to touch somebody in a very special way. They never denied the testimony, either one of them ever. They just struggled with alcohol.
Well, I think the one reason why her dad really attached to our little boy is because our little boy was born on the 1st of November, and his birthday was on the 3rd of November.
Also,
so they really worked together.
my
It
dad,
was really,
he fell in
Right.
love with the Polynesian people.
yeah.
And when I was going with William and I came home, and I told him, I said, Dad, there's somebody that wants to meet you, and he's asked me to marry him. And I said, he'll be here tomorrow. And he said, what kind is he? And I said, he's Samoan. And he says, the finest people I ever taught were Samoan. And he says, I'm looking forward to meeting him. And then William came the next day, and my dad, akoma mai, in Hawaiian. And my dad could speak very good Hawaiian. And his mother was greeted the same way, and my dad always wanted to know what a mixed blood child would look like. His blood could run.
You've seen one.
And so he fell in love with our children. I mean, they've been really close to him because of his love for the Polynesian people.
So can you tell us a little more about when you two were first, or how you two first met?
Well,
I'll let her tell her version. It's happy that way. Oh, mine, I was happy.
I was a teacher at BYU Hawaii, and I had been basically called to go there to teach. I had just graduated from BYU Provo, and I walked into the church that first Sunday, and all I saw was, but even prior to that, before you become a teacher at any of the church schools, you're interviewed by a general authority. And my interview was with President Monson. And he sat me down and asked me the general questions, of almost like a temple recommend interview. But he did say, he says, now I've married many Polynesian people to Caucasian people. And he says, and some of them are very successful and some of them aren't. So I'm going to counsel you now as I would my sister. And he says, I don't want you to date anyone unless you would intend to marry them. And I thought, whoa, that's that's pretty hard. You think, wow, that's good stuff. How should I do this? And so I listened to him and everything, and he says, and I bless you. And he was very excited about me coming to Hawaii. And so I had no money whatsoever. I paid all my money to get my thesis done, and I had my ticket, and the church pretty well moves you over there. And so I moved to Hawaii, and so I got to the islands and went to church that Sunday and walked in, and I happened to notice that this young man and his wife and child were sitting on the third row in a beautiful family. Well, not knowing at that time that was going to be my husband to be. And they had been having trouble in their life. Adversity is everywhere. And that very Sunday, his wife and him broke up. And he remembers what I was wearing.
She was wearing purple and had beautiful blonde hair. She walked down, sat on the left side of the chapel.
And we didn't know one another at all.
Yeah.
I had no idea who he was, or he didn't know who I was. And so I was there for several months. And he took care of his divorce, and he went through his divorce and everything. And I was the teacher there at the church college, and he always was over there playing racquetball and different sports, and I didn't notice him or anything. And so he came up to me and he said, Sister Watts, could you teach me how to play racquetball? And I said, well, sure, I'll teach you how. I mean, it's part of my job here. We can play racquetball. Well, I didn't know that he already knew. He could hit it behind his back, under his leg, through his arm. I mean, he was an incredible racquetball player, but I proceeded to teach him. And we struggled through, and he could spot me 20 points, give me 20 points, and the game was to 21, and I would still give him a good game for that 1 point. And so that's how I first got to know him. But I had met his father, Oliver, the son of the Amen. And I loved his father. He was over the motor pool, and I had brought a car from the mainland, and he had already been trying to fix the tires and fix me up and make sure that everything was working okay, and I loved his father so much. Well, then he came, and I was a semi-professional softball pitcher, and I was pitching a game out in Hauula, and his brother came to him and says, you've got to meet this girl. And so he says, come on, let's go watch her play. And so then his brother and him came out and watched me play softball out in Hauula. And he says, all right. And then he just became a very good friend. We became best friends. So I could add something to President Monson's, yes, don't date anybody unless you intend to marry them, and become best friends so that you know them in all aspects of their life. And there was one really big problem. I made my list, a celestial list, a terrestrial list. And everything was on the celestial side except one thing, he was too short. I had never, ever dated anyone shorter than myself, ever. And so when we sit down, he's a little bit taller than I am. But when I stand up, I'm a lot taller than he is. So I prayed and prayed that wouldn't make any difference, because all the celestial qualities overpowered the telestial quality. And he became taller and taller and taller. And we were married the 20th of December. I saw him in the temple, and I had prayed very much about this situation because I knew it would be difficult. I thought it would be. But I took heed to what President Monson said. We had so much in common. Our birthdays were the same day. Families came from adversity in some ways, and yet our goals and our direction in life were totally the same. And there's never been an adjustment, ever. We were totally meant for one another right from the first day, and we've been married 35 years since. But I did give him his road scholarship and sent him down the road because he was too short. But he came back and wanted a personal priesthood interview. And he says, I understand what you're saying, but I really love you. And that's all it took.
That was the end of the PPI.
Now, can you tell us? So you were coming in a very stressful situation. How was that when you two first met? What was it from your perspective?
What, the first marriage?
Being divorced and
Oh.
coming into our marriage.
Well, that wasn't too hard because I always, adhere to what my mother said. She said, you need to take care of your wife and everything. And so when I used to have a little bout with my other wife, I always make up. But this Sunday it was a different Sunday. I couldn't get her to go with me to the airport to pick up a good friend coming in from Phoenix. Instead of that, she took off to the hospital, and she was there for quite a long time, and the plane landed already. And so she thought I was going to be really upset. Well, I was upset, yeah, but I wasn't upset to really grab her. And but anyway, to make story short, she called the police. The police came and got me out, and she took everything and got out of the house. She said, I'm going to go over and live with my mom and dad across the highway. I said, okay. But the bishop didn't like it. He gave me a hard time. He asked me, he took me in. He said, Brother Amu, I said, yes. Are you going to be reconciled with your wife? I said, no. I can just see the hair in the back of his neck going up. So he said, why? And I told him why. And then he said, well, do you know you can get excommunicated for this? I said, well, Bishop, you have all the power in the world. You're the father of ward. But I want you to go and check out, the attendance of the church in our ward. Then you'll find out what I've been doing. And he said, yeah, I can see that. Then he turned around and said, well, what I want, you can get for disfellowship for this. I said, well, I already told you, Bishop, you got the power in the world to do everything. But I want you to know, if you check it out, see who comes to church, you'll find out. And then you can make your own decision. Well, he knew, I wasn't that type of person because I always went to church. Then about 3 weeks later, I got a letter from my first wife, bold letters, I want a divorce. So I asked the bishop, I want to have you read this letter. We got in the meeting. He read the letter and he said, oh, now I know. But anyway, that was it. And I finally went and got the divorce and everything in May of 1972. Then I was able to, just like she said, we were just the best friends in the world. We went to do things together, but that led to, being close together and having fun, and that was it.
And that bishop gave us a cruise out on the ocean.
He even gave us a cruise
A
ticket
free
to go out.
cruise ticket. It was really wonderful.
But that was it.
What blessings have you seen in your life from living the gospel?
The blessings is a lot. We've been able to have, the 3 kids to work with here on this earth. And I want you to know that I love her mother very much, and that's the way I was taught because of my mom. She said, when you get married, you don't marry just the girl, you marry the mother also.
And he's been a wonderful
And
son.
when her dad died in 1994 and our son was in the mission in Guatemala, she used to call nearly every day, every week, but one time she called and she didn't say a thing. And I said to her, who was that? She said, oh, that was my mom. I said, well, what does she want? Well, she wanted us to come home, go up to Smithfield at, Friday night or Friday and Saturday. I said, well, there's nothing wrong with that. I said, I want you to know there's only one mother. And I was referring to her mother, because that was her relationship. I said, there's only one mother. So when she calls, let us know. I'll drop everything down. We'll go to Smithfield. And we've been doing that ever since. So.
And that's the blessings right there, the family.
Yeah, it's a family.
It's
get together
the
all
church
time.
is about family and the strength of the family. And without the strength of the family, what do you have? You would lose all meaning for being here. and doing the things that we're supposed to do. The family is the most important thing, and it's being challenged so drastically in today's lifestyle. And I think that alone has to be preserved. And that's one thing I can say about us is the strength of the family, of trying to keep things together. Is it hard? Yes, it's really hard. The adversity that is out there pulling our children, fighting against our children, the lifestyles that are out there, trying to get our children to do this, the drug element that's there. And but the gospel is that pattern of life that we can cut, see where we're supposed to go, see what directions we're supposed to go. And it's the stability behind all aspects of life. It is the that long-lasting happiness. It doesn't start and end with eat, drink, and be merry. It's choosing something that will last for eternity. And I think the gospel of Jesus Christ is the only way that you can survive the things that are in this life today.
What are some challenges or difficulties that you've now faced having your own family and raising your children in the gospel?
Well, we've taught them the right things. And just for an example, our oldest boy, who's here with us, finally realized that things he's doing is just too short of happiness. He wanted happiness, like he said, family time. He was in Mexico. He gave us a call. He cried, and then he was and he came back and he went to work for a guy over in Gunnison, Colorado, a Jewish boy, and he reads his scriptures every morning. He hasn't given that at all like other people who finished reading scriptures, but he reads the scriptures every day. Anyway, this one time, well, we all know this. The beginning of this year was President Hinckley passed away, and so they had a TV, and so they were watching on Saturday, the funeral, and you won't believe this, but the Jewish boy cried throughout the whole thing, and well, of course he was crying along with him. And I know he's doing his very best, in relation to the friends he has and the people he works for. And then he finally went, when he came home, he went and saw the bishop. And that was it. Bishop came and said, "There's only one way for you, and this is it right here." And that was it. And so we're having fun working with our kids.
Adversity in this lifestyle is constantly there.
Yeah.
It is very, very difficult. And one little inch of giving into Satan's way is too much. And it's been very difficult raising our children, but we did teach them the things that they should know. And yeah, they may stray, but they will come back. And we've had our trials and our stories of hardships, but our children are good people. They're good kids. We're happy that our son is making some good choices and doing the things that he should do, and our other two kids are wonderful children. One day they'll come back to where they need to be. But it's hard. The thing is that we don't lose our footing. We don't lose what we believe.
Yeah.
We stay strong.
We just show them parental love. And I think that's what most of them like, most of them want, is parental love. No matter how they are, put your arms around them, give them a kiss, and Dad, we love you.
But there's nothing easy about raising children in today's.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Nothing easy.
It's not easy.
But I think the main thing is that we need to do what we're supposed to do, so that example's always there. Because if you lose that, you've lost everything.
Yeah. And I think, I got that. Well, I'm sure she got the same thing from her parents. Like I said, my mother was of another religion before she became a Mormon, but she read a lot of scriptures, and she had the skills of being a good mom. And so she taught us right. I mean, I love to clean the house. She doesn't have to tell me.
That's good.
Are you laughing, hon?
No.
Okay. But it's not that, I mean, you go and there are things in the house that you need to do sometimes. You have to.
Can you share with us too, what brings you back to Samoa now?
Well, my husband's always told me about Samoa and how beautiful it was. We were supposed to go on our honeymoon, but we never got out of Hawaii. And so we decided that it was time. We were both retired, and I wanted to see where he came from. And our boy wanted to learn his culture and to be able to learn about the Samoan people. And so we're here.
But the thing is, there was a big reunion down in New Zealand at the school and the temple. And so we went down there first. We were there for about 12 days. Had fun down there. And then she said, we need to go to Samoa. I want to see the place. And so we came up here. And instead of 1 week, now we're here for 2 weeks, which is okay. I mean, we're having fun. And I'm glad that new experiences. And for our son, he's really taking it in.
Samoa's a hidden culture. I mean, it's the hustle and bustle of American society in America or in Pongo. You've got the hustle and bustle, the McDonald's, the Burger King. In Samoa, away from Paisanga, is family.
I mean, we went to Savai'i. She couldn't believe the way the people were behaving.
We couldn't find a place to stay. And this is what Samoa is all about. He stopped at an LDS church, and there were 2 boys out in front of the church. And he said, are any of you LDS? And he says, yes, I am. I says, well, we are here late at night, and I have my son and my wife in the car, and we can't find a place to stay. Would you know of a place where we could find a place to stay? Thinking of a beachside folly or something that we could be in. He says, come to our house. My dad is the branch president. And so we went to their home, and he went up and greeted them and introduced himself in Samoan and everything, and said that his wife and son were in the car, and they says, come in. So we came in, sat on the floor, they brought the mats, they fed us food, plate after plate, mounds of food.
Well, you know by now.
And
you don't eat all the food.
The washing of the hands in the bowl, and then they turned over their house to us and gave us two bedrooms to sleep in, and they stayed in the follies where they stay all the time. Any of the houses never used. They had a Palangi house and it wasn't being used, and so we got to stay on the mattresses, on the floor in the Palangi house while they were in their Samoan houses. And we were greeted to breakfast, Koko Samoa, Koko Samoa, Koko Samoa, and dishes that I'd never seen, but it was so much food, and he had taught me about the culture and what to do, and then when we were about to leave, there were tears. I mean, this family is so strong, and we didn't have anything to give them. They wouldn't take money. They wouldn't take it. We offered them money, and they wouldn't take any money. They said, we are so blessed by you coming to our family. And so the father, he was getting ready to go do his church work that morning, and he was dressed in the Samoa attire, and William had some really nice sandals, and he took them off his feet, and he put him on the father's feet. And we all cried. It was amazing. And their son Va'a, Patrick and him just matched up perfectly. And he says, you cannot leave. You're taking my brother. And so he had taken Patrick diving, and he'd taken Patrick to the beach, and he'd taken him fishing, and we were just there 2 days, but it was like a lifetime. And that's what the gospel's about.
Yeah.
That's the gospel of Jesus Christ, right there. No pretenses. just family, sharing love with another family, and no expectations, no material aspects, just giving anything they have. And so we met a new lifetime friend.
In closing,
Yep.
Thank
we'd
you.
like to ask you.
You can edit that.
In closing, we would like to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing your testimonies.
Sure. Go ahead. Huh?
It's been a long time since I bore my testimony. I have a young son, our youngest. Who has schizophrenia. And just before he was ready to go on his mission, he became very sick. And he can no longer be well. And all he ever wanted to do was serve a mission. And I know that we would not be here in Samoa today if it were not the strength of the gospel and the love that the gospel has given us in our life. And I know that my son will be okay now. And people have said, how have you endured over the last 10 years? And I said that it's been a living death. But if I hadn't have had the priesthood, and if we hadn't have had the strength of our other 2 children, and his heritage, and his strength in the gospel, we would not be here today. Life is very hard, but the gospel is true. And we love the church. We love every aspect of the church. Is it difficult? Yes, sometimes it's very difficult. Our Father in heaven does give us trials in our life, but he also gives us those things which can help us handle those trials. And our children are our most precious tools that we have in our life. And we have to refine in the refiner's fire and put those children through many trials, and they put us through many trials, but through that refiner's fire, we're able to come out better people. And I know the gospel's true. I know our Father in heaven lives. I know that Joseph Smith was a prophet of God, and I know that President Monson is a prophet of God. I've walked with these prophets, and I know the testimony and the strength. I've worked in the school systems, and the jobs I've had in the church, there's no other way. And I bear truth to this in the name of my Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I like to bear my testimony that I know that the gospel is true. I could see that when my father was bringing us up in Pesanga, and being away from Pesanga for quite a while, and then come back on the mission back in '62, and to see the church the way it is today. I like to bear the testimony that I know the work of the Lord is going along here real well. And I know that the Spirit of our Father in heaven is here. And I know that my wife has been one of what you call a foundation for me to move forward. And if it wasn't for my family, I don't think I'd be around. All I know is I've listened to what my mom and dad said, especially my mother and my dad, who just loves the church. And so I like to bear my testimony. I know that the church is true. Joseph Smith, he was called to bring the restoration to this earth. And of course, we now have living prophets, and I know that Prophet Thomas S. Monson is truly a leader of our Father in heaven. May the Lord bless him, and may the Lord bless us all. And this I ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I want you to know, maybe this is not connected. President Monson was the only person that had to give me my papers to go back to school at 3:30 in the morning in American Samoa, Tafuna International Airport. He saw me. He said, "Are you Elder Amu?" I said, "Yes, Elder Monson." He said, "This is the paper you want, the I-20?" I said, "Yes, sir." gave him a shake hand, gave him a little hug, and then I was ready to go. So I really, really appreciate talking to you guys.